Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I have a fantastic guest with me today. Her name is Samantha Ruth. She is a transformational psychologist, an expert grief and anxiety coach, a speaker, a best-selling author, and founder of Griefhab, a 24/7 support community for anyone who has experienced a loss. Sam helps people all over the world turn their pain into power by guiding them to be their true selves, by embracing their differences, and by living life on their own terms. And just reading that for the second time today, I got chills. So for some reason, that really resonates with me. And I think that's a very powerful statement and a powerful mission. So Samantha, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know that you like to be called Sam, but I'll probably end up going back and forth between both. So tell us your story, how you came on this path that you're on, this journey, how you came to create this Griefhab, which I think is the most amazing thing, to have a 24/7 service for people who are suffering with loss, grief, depression, anxiety. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and say, tell us your story.
Yeah, and they all go together: loss, grief, depression, anxiety, right? Yeah. I don't think you have one without all. But I met my husband when I was 24 years old in Michigan, and we were both really career driven and knew we were the ones for each other, but we went our separate ways a couple of years later. And neither one of us ever married or met anyone else. So when we reconnected over 10 years later, I relocated to Colorado immediately and would have told you I was living a fairy tale. I mean, at our wedding, people talked about this could be a Lifetime movie. Like, we really, the ones that got away, we never found anyone else. And I moved to Colorado and we were off into the sunset. And a few years later, on a typical Wednesday, he just collapsed at work with an undetected heart condition that he'd had his whole life. So I lived it. I am a psychologist, so there was a lot of expectation to a psychologist who specialized in trauma, just to be able to bounce back and be at work and be doing the things I had always done. And I couldn't and wouldn't do that. So my grief journey was really unique and a little bit lonely. And what I learned the most was that I had to tune out all the noise and do what I needed to do, even if it made no sense, to get through it. And so I became extremely passionate about helping other people understand that.
That sounds so heartbreaking because, you know, as a professional in the field, I mean, you understand what is happening with, you know, yourself, but that doesn't make it any easier. And for people to kind of like, well, you know, you should understand what's happening here and just go ahead and go to work and take care of other people.
But we live in this world where, I mean, people just bounce back. At the end of growing up, I would cry after anybody else's funerals or losses to my dad, because people would stand up and start talking about what they wanted to eat. And I couldn't connect the dots. I just never understood it. I feel like that's our world of drive-throughs and Amazon and instant gratification.
That explains it.
I just was like the fake it until you make it, or put on a happy face. I couldn't do that. I was in so much pain that pulling myself together wasn't an option. There was no pulling myself together. And so I wasn't going to pretend to just be okay doing life.
Well, and it's not like, the loss of your husband is just so traumatic in itself, but then you were in a city where you really didn't know a whole lot of people. I mean, you hadn't been established here for years and years and years.
No. And so at the emergency room, I called my dad and outside, after I told him, said, figure out a way to get me home. That my instant reaction is you want your family, you want what, but by the time I got back to my house in Denver and had 10 or 15 people waiting for me and the mountains, thinking about, and this was before the pandemic, but I cannot imagine having gone to Michigan where there's so much less to do in the winter and I would be stuck indoors. And so a lot of my healing journey was Colorado and doing anything in nature with my dog who was grieving insanely and why I got a second. And people didn't understand. Like I would go hiking with her. I would go do things with her, but I didn't want to be in crowds and loud, noisy places.
I love the way that you brought up the mountains, because to me, my own personal experience now, I've been in Colorado now 43 years. So I've been here a really long time. I consider myself pretty much almost a native. But to me, the mountains have such an incredible power behind them, an incredible healing energy. And a lot of times when, my life is just falling apart, or things just aren't going the right way, all I have to do is look at the mountains or, and then go up there and just be in that cool mountain air. And just, it's something about it that is just so healing.
And nature did help me heal. And I think that's why I'm very passionate about saying, do it your way, because that might not work for someone else. There's somebody else who might need to be constantly surrounded by other people and in noisier, but that's what worked for me. And it really worked. Even if it was just sitting outside playing in the dirt. I went back to being a kid and doing simple things.
That is a powerful statement, because I think a lot of people we have to, I know you've got your doggies there, and I want to hear more about the dogs later, because as I told you, I'm such a dogaholic. And I absolutely love your breed. But anyway, people expect us to compartmentalize, and as adults, you just have to act like an adult. You have to be a grown up, you can't but the thing that going back to playing and being a child, going outside is really therapeutic and has its own healing energy.
And I didn't know how productive it was then. Then I was doing whatever could give me a little bit of peace to get through it at the time. And now it does have a benefit, but it didn't matter. I was finger painting at 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. Like these things don't make sense or look like I was moving forward, but now I use art as healing. I didn't know that then. So it's really important to be able to tune out everyone else who says you should be sleeping or you should be working on this. If you feel like finger painting and you're going through a trauma, do it. There's a reason you're feeling like it.
2 things I wanted to say is that's the one word I really do not like. And I finally learned how to take that out of my vocabulary. Is it starts with an S. It's the should word, because we use it way too much. And it's no, you shouldn't do that. Or it's not that you should do, it's what you could do that really counts. And the other thing is another one of my podcast episodes, I did have a lady who used art therapy to treat her anxiety. And she didn't even realize it. She used to do art when she was much younger, but she couldn't sleep. She got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and she pulled out some of her little, her boys' crayons. So her son was quite young, pulled out the crayons and some paper and just started coloring. And a couple of hours later, she realized how great she felt.
That's what I think is most important. And I don't know that anybody else, until you go through it, would encourage that. But if you want to play with Play-Doh or go like whatever it is that is calling you, or you have a thought to do it. We've gone through something traumatic. Joy is a very difficult word to think about in that state, but anything that can relieve pain or give you a little bit of peace has value.
No matter how controversial or how, non-conformist it might be.
Right. I mean, I looked ridiculous sitting playing with sticks in the dirt, like I was 6 years old, but it helped me.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing too, that we have such an innate wisdom deep inside of us that we know what we need, but then there's that brain, that cognitive part that says, no, you're an adult, you shouldn't do this. But basically it's just kind of like follow your heart and follow your instincts and your desire to sit in the dirt and play in the mud.
Dallas says hi.
Oh, hi.
Um,
So this happens a lot with my guests who have dogs, because I think there's some kind of communication, even through the screen and across the miles. They know how much I love them.
I believe it. So to bring them into the conversation, Sassy is now 9.
Wow.
She was grieving as much as I was. Really, truly, I could take her to Chatfields and go swimming for hours and come home and she would lay by the door looking for Jim.
Oh.
And it was devastating. It was compounding my loss. So I went to Grand Lake for our anniversary, and she met a puppy and played with the puppy the whole time I was there. And I came home and said, I'm getting a puppy. Now let's talk about the noise, or not even what we say to ourselves. Everybody said to me, are you out of your mind?
Because everybody's an expert when it comes to your life.
Right.
Gotta
And
love
2
it.
dogs is always harder than 1. And old me might have factored it in, because it was people who want the best for me. They love me. They just didn't want me to have more on my plate. Best thing I ever did for both of us, because she started healing. I mean, it was truly the beginning of our healing and re-engaging in life again.
I love the fact that you brought up Grand Lake too, because I love Grand Lake. That is an amazing place. We went there last October. I've lived here 43 years. I've never been there.
Oh my
I know.
God.
We go to Estes Park all the time and on the other side of Rocky Mountain National Park, but I had so much fun. I mean, doing nothing, sitting, we'd walk in the morning and sit on a bench on Main Street. We would sit there and just watch the traffic. And 5 minutes later, here comes another car, and we'd watch that car. And it's like, well, that was interesting. There's a car. 5 minutes later, another car would go the other way. So it was just, there's again, that healing energy that's just doing what you want to do, something relaxing and being in nature and the mountains. And yeah, it's just pretty.
But I think, you've said it and I've said it at least once, listening to ourselves. We have a little inner voice, and I, throughout life, shut mine up and thought other people knew better or argued with myself. So going to Grand Lake for our anniversary, just with me and Sassy, it's a couple of hours.
Right.
People were like, we don't think it's a good idea for you to go by yourself right now. And you're like, God forbid. And what if you get there and you're missing Jim even more and you're a mess and you can't drive back? They all, again, meant well, but I knew I had to go. And we met this puppy, and that week was truly the beginning, not my healing, but also learning that, you know what, that little voice isn't wrong. And I've shut it up for all these years.
I know, we all do it. We all do it. And then when you think about, well, what if I did listen to everybody else who was looking out for me and my best interests, and yeah, my own personal experience in life is nobody really cares about me as much as I care about myself. Do you know what I mean? And my well-being. And everybody thinks they have the answer. And I know that even when they're trying to be really helpful and they're very well-meaning and they're looking out for us, it's still, there's that, we know ourselves better than anybody else does. And we know what we need.
And I just knew I needed to be there. And driving was a trigger. You hear a song, I would pull over on the side of the road and be sobbing. So of course my family knew this, and it's not straight lanes here in Colorado. It's going into the mountains. So me and my dog alone. So there was valid concern. I understood that. And I have anxiety driving. So that got me thinking, but I just knew for no reason, I had to go. I was not listening to my dad, which is very rare. That's not something I do often. And it changed my life that week.
So was it very empowering?
It was so empowering. And it taught me that when that voice is telling me one thing, it doesn't matter what anybody else is telling me, because it was right. And so I started to have my voice and use it. And I made a decision to take a year off and work with Jack Canfield. And that is out for, and I didn't know why. It was not for my career. Most people train with him to use it for their business. I was lost, had no idea what was next, and just, he's my mentor. He had a program. I knew I needed to do it. And I'm a planner. So, this was so I didn't understand it and I couldn't explain it, but I was able to do it and stand up to all the rational reasons. It sounded really, get back to work. What about money?
Yeah.
Best decision, because I met people who are family.
Yeah. When you talk about that, get back to work, and I'm sure that some people do find getting back to work fairly quickly is, very helpful. But when you're in a healing and a helping profession, when you're hurting so much and you're trying to take care of other people, and in my medical career, I've been in RT and then PT, total of 40 years. And there were times when it's like, I felt so bad that I could barely take care of myself, but yet there I was taking care of other people.
It took, and I want anybody listening to not have to learn the hard way. It took being in so much pain that I did this. In the past, I would have done it the other way.
And you wouldn't be where you're at right now.
I would not. And I certainly had no intention of making grief. None of that. Grief was, I was just trying to survive. But it all led to where I am now. And part of that is because I couldn't find the resources I needed as a therapist and a psychologist. If I couldn't get through it, and I said to a friend in passing, I feel like I need, there's rehab for everything else. And she was like, do it.
That's it. Yeah. So I want to go back and just do like a little bit of a time frame here of when it was that you lost Jim. And then, when it was that you got another puppy, got another dog. And then when it was that you got that light bulb that went off in your head, I need rehab for grief. So what was kind of the timeline there?
So he passed away December 27th, 2017. Our anniversary is August 16th coming up. So almost 8 months later. I would say those first 8 months, if you told me we went to Japan together, I would believe you. My memory is not solid. So after I got through the winter, I started doing things like going to Red Rocks and taking my dog wherever, but not okay. It was going to Grand Lake in August. So just under 8 months. That was the beginning. I came home, got Dallas, made the decision to, the person I met, I was sitting with my Success Principles book by Jack Canfield. And she said, are you in his training program? She's the one who had the puppy. I didn't know he had a training program. So the universe that gave me this angel, who I came home, got a puppy, connected with Jack Canfield, and made the decision to take 2019 off.
And now, were you in Boulder at that time, or you were still in Denver?
I was still in Denver. I only moved last year.
Okay. So then tell us about this training and what happened when you completed it.
I had no idea why I was doing it. Looking back, don't know how I did it. I don't know how I got on a plane, how I outside looked okay and interacted with strangers. And inside I was going, don't fall apart, Sam. Don't fall apart, Sam. But it was a community of people who got it. It was the safest place. So for me, the reason I had to do it was to meet these people. Some have become friends. One connected me with my publisher, who has been the biggest part of my life, a dear friend. So do I use his work in my work? Of course. The Success Principles benefit everyone, but I didn't go there thinking this will help me with my clients. I didn't know if I would continue seeing clients.
But then obviously, once you completed it and you came back, what made you decide to move to Boulder? And, when did that happen? And then when did you start working with people again?
So moving from Michigan to Colorado is, I think moving for anyone is a big transition, but you and I were just talking about Denver and how chaotic. I mean, it was extremely overwhelming for me, and I have anxiety. And so I don't think I ever loved it, but once I lost Jim, I hated it. And I wanted to move immediately, but I didn't want to make any impulsive or emotional decisions that I might regret. So I didn't end up moving until 2020. So 2.5 years. It was 2.5 years
Okay.
after I had lost him.
Mhm.
It was so, again, it was something I knew I needed to do. Just changing the energy and being in a new place. People like instantly said something's different.
Oh, that's great. Well, Boulder too is a lot more laid back than Denver.
Yeah. And I'm in the middle of nowhere in Boulder. So,
Oh, good
I'm
for
not-
you.
yeah. So I just think it's important for people to understand that you don't have to know why. I
Mhm.
did not know why I was taking this year to train with Jack Canfield. I truly met people who are as close to me as family, and that was why. And
And
then the next steps kept coming.
and if I can kind of like extend that a little bit, you don't have to understand why, and you don't have to explain it to anybody else.
Right.
That's the second half of the equation.
Including yourself.
Ooh, that's good.
Right. I mean, that's who I would have been arguing with the whole time.
Mhm.
You can't take this year off. You have no idea what your future is financial. You don't have Jim here. Are you moving back to Michigan? Didn't matter. I knew. And as the planner, that was the biggest adjustment I had to make. I had to give myself permission to not know. And in the knowing, all these beautiful gifts started showing up that I had been too busy for 40 years, planning and living that I didn't see in life. So I now embrace the unknown.
Mhm.
And it scares many, but I really, really did not, I had everything mapped out.
All right. So I'm actually looking over your shoulder, and I do see when you said that permission was permission granted. So that's one of the books.
Mhm. And my chapter is Permission to Grieve, because I
Mhm.
think we also live in a world that doesn't understand that we need to grieve. We need to
Mhm.
honor the process. So you do not need permission from anyone. The world has it backwards,
Mhm.
not us.
Yeah, exactly. And especially too, I mean, it's such a natural part of life, and living is loss. Unfortunately, sometimes if it comes like it does, for you and losing Jim like that, I mean, it's horrible, but it's part of life. And even seeing your dog going through the grieving process as well, it's an amazing thing. I mean, dogs, I think, and animals are a lot smarter than we are, because they do take the time to grieve and they work through it their own way. I've always had like multiple dogs. I've had, several at the same time. One time I actually had 6 Italian Greyhounds and a Black Lab all at the same time. I was a lot younger then, but they go through the grieving process too when the pack changes.
Yeah, I truly feel like Dallas is Sassy's service dog. She is happier and healthier than she was.
Mhm.
And I mean, we went through it. It broke my heart, but it shows me the power that animals have. So that's another thing. If you want to go play with a puppy or play with a baby, like those are the things that make us smile.
Mhm. And I love the fact that you said baby, because a lot of times, it doesn't matter what kind of a mood you're in. You can be in the worst mood ever, and you see a baby, or, just laughing and giggling and having a good time. You can't help but smile. You cannot help but have your spirits just lifted. And, all of a sudden, whatever it was that was wearing you down is a little bit lighter.
And we don't need to know the reason. One of my clients just wanted to be around dogs. Well, it was getting her through grief. It was getting her out of the house. So she started going to the Humane Society, started volunteering, and with no intent other than to get through the day after a loss of a spouse. Well, then she opened a rescue.
Oh,
But that wasn't in the plan.
right.
She didn't know why she was doing it. And we beat ourselves up. I could be doing so many other things. I could be working on this, and this. And I would just say, there's a reason. It'll unfold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the Griefhab, because obviously it was that one off the cuff comment you made to your friend, and then she was like, voila, that's it.
So part of the grief journey is that there are constantly triggers and there are constantly tasks. So the first year, literally, present the death certificate here. You do it. That itself is traumatic. You come home, you recover. Nobody knows any of this is going on. And I would feel like, okay, I can catch my breath again. And another task would come in the mail. over and really, truly, anyone who's gone through this knows it really does take like about a year to get through all the details that take away from grieving. So I realized that I want to take that off of people's plates. Give me everything so you can do survival. And if that means finding a handyman in your area, because when the light bulb goes out, that feels like the end of the world, and Googling a handyman doesn't even come to your mind, then I will find him, make sure you like him, and set it up so that you don't have to do any of the dumb stuff. You can just get through whatever's next. And I've helped people with not just creating a meal plan, but finding the person, the nutritionist, to go get the ingredients and cook it. So all you have to do is open the refrigerator and have a protein ball, because we don't care about eating or cooking either.
Well, yeah, or even trying to plan, to write a grocery list, I think would just be, overwhelming. And where do you start? Where do you start? And who cares? Who cares? I don't, want to eat anything.
So I have the community, which is 24/7. You don't have to wait until your next appointment to reach out to me. And there's support from everyone else as well. But then I work with people one-on-one who want more, who want to say, you know what, do my groceries for me. Help me with somebody's struggling with learning how to do a billing issue, whatever it is that is giving you stress, send it to me.
So basically you're really helping them with the activities of daily living, and not just like counseling them once a week and coming to rehab or grief, counseling. It really is practical. And
it's different for each person. I'm interacting. Do we perform the same way we did after a trauma? Does our brain work? But our bosses expect us to show up and be as productive in those 8 hours. So I'm working with one woman's boss because she doesn't want to lose her job, but you need to understand what's realistic and she can't vocalize that to him in this current state. So I'm the bridge. And with other people, that's their families.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Well, it sounds like such an amazing service, and it sounds so sensible that, like, why didn't anybody else ever think of this before?
I'll tell you, I got it trademarked, and the attorney said, this is the easiest trademark process I've ever had. There's nothing similar. It was like, it takes months normally. It was simple, and it does seem like common sense, but it's not there. Yeah. Funeral homes, hospitals, the support isn't offered, explained. So I just want people to know it's there. We get it. I'm doing a podcast about this, but I got an invite from my subdivision little area for a neighborhood event. And it said parents and children, couples, whatever it was, but there was no category that I fell into. And the world doesn't realize how often they forget about widows. There is much more support, and I hate this, but there is much more support if you lose a child than if you lose a spouse. Yeah. So it's not right. It doesn't make sense. But when I was sitting there struggling with all of my knowledge and education and resources, I'm thinking, what is somebody who wouldn't know to look for these things going through?
Right.
If it's this hard for me, what is the average person without these tools? How much more are they struggling?
And suffering.
Yeah. Because I was. And so that's my mission. My mission prior was to change the way the world views mental health. It's now to change the way the world views both grief and mental health.
Well, do you feel like the grieving process is a part of like definitely like a blip or an interruption in our mental health?
Absolutely. And people don't acknowledge it. You don't get leave time.
Right.
Somebody, I think, got a day. And whatever it is, the world is who needs educating. Corporations, CEOs, for what we can do to make places safer so that people don't have to worry about putting on a happy face and getting back to work. If they want to get back to work and they're not okay, that's okay. I wasn't pretending to be okay.
There is nothing more exhausting than trying to pretend like nothing's wrong and go through your day smiling at everybody. It is exhausting. It is just kind of like chipping away at your spirit. And, it's just horrible.
So to everyone who's agreeing and thinking, oh my God, the rest of the world might not understand it, and that's okay. They have it backwards. If we were taught in school or, growing up, that when you experience a loss, you're required to take X amount of time, a month, to go through it, not just bounce back, the opposite of bouncing back, we would all handle it differently. We just don't know any better.
Yeah, it's not over when the funeral ends. That's when it's really just starting.
Right. And everybody is there in the initial crisis.
Right. And everybody wants to help and stuff. But then once it's over and people start going back to their lives and their homes and yeah, it's a pretty lonely feeling.
Right. So I just want you all to know that there is no right way. My way is different than your way, and both are right. Everyone has to do their own path, because if we do anyone else's, we won't heal.
Now, do you still do work with clients one-on-one with counseling?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us also about the books. I want to hear about the 3 that are already out there and the one that is coming up. I'm very excited for you. That's great.
So I was writing to heal. I write Jim a letter every day. Just was part of my process. And through connecting with Jack Canfield and the community, somebody posted something about a collection of stories. And that's how I connected with, so August was Grand Lake. September-ish, I joined with Jack Canfield for the following, coming January. And November, I met Kate Butler, who is my dear, dear friend and publisher. And the first book is Women Who Illuminate. And it's 30 stories of women, and my story is Infinite Love. And it's just uplifting, and every single chapter will change your view, your life, make you think of someone you know. And so through connecting with her, I just kept going and did another book, which is The Permission Granted that we talked about. And then my group of Canfield, the 50 of us, we graduated, and we thought, we need to share this powerful year and this experience with others to let them know. And so I think it's 36 of us, 35 success trainers, 35 of my graduating class contributed a chapter, and we wrote life lessons in success. And it's all about, not with Jack, but how his training or teachings in some way have impacted us. And so my chapter in that is Grief Changes You, Find Your Tribe. They are my tribe.
Oh, nice. And then the one that's coming out soon?
Again, publishing with Kate Butler, a woman who I met through Jack Canfield. Claudia and I are both passionate about breaking the stigma. So we are doing The Faces of Mental Illness, and it's 20 real stories of living with mental illness or living with someone with mental illness. And we believe it will be a movement, and it is the first of many. So if you know anyone who has a story to share, we are doing for men, for women, for moms, you name it.
So will that all be in the same book, or is it going to be one book that focuses on moms, one that focuses on men, or so it's going to be a series?
Correct. Like the Chicken Soup books by Jack Canfield again.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So great information. Now, how can people find you? Because I did look at your website. You've got a lot of information on your website.
Everything is there.
Okay.
So that SamanthaRuth.com is the easiest place to find any and everything. Books, podcast, how to work with me. It's all in one place.
Okay. Tell us about your podcast.
The podcast is The Be Ruthless Show, and it's making noise and breaking stigmas. My book that will be coming out, I can't give a date because I'm still writing it, is Redefining Ruthless. And this is kind of my overall perception of mental illness, of the world. We have these things that are perceived as negative, and I reframe them into positives or superpowers. People think mental illness is a weakness or a disadvantage. And this book is about the fact that it's a gift and your superpower. So ruthless is looked at as a negative word. And my book is about redefining that process, because I now live life ruthlessly and don't consider it to be at all negative.
And is that also a little play on your last name as well?
Yeah, Samantha Ruth.
Yeah. I love it. I have to admit, the very first time, either you contacted me or Alyssa contacted me, and it was like, oh, okay, I'll check this out, and I'll look at I'll look at her website, and I clicked on it, and I saw a page, and it was like, she has a pit bull, because I love pit bulls, and I think that they are so misunderstood. And just tell us a little bit about the dogs, and especially the one, the Sassy, is it, that went through the grieving process with you?
Yes, Sassy rescued me 9 years ago after I lost Harley, who I just had, and she has been with me, moving from Michigan to Colorado with Jim, and through losing him. And she's a pit bull mix. And in Denver, as you know, up until recently, that was really, really difficult. So when I decided to get Dallas, I had to get her from California because my address wouldn't allow me to get a pit bull. So, again, let's talk about things that are perceived to be negative and are the most amazing things. They are my little bundles of joy and each other's absolute best friends. And I mean, I don't know how Sassy would have gotten through it without her. And Dallas's name is because I'm a Cowboys fan and Jim is not. Like, he is the furthest thing from it. So I used to tease him and say, you're going to come home from work one day and I'm going to have another dog named Dallas. And he would say, I'll compromise and we can get another dog, but anything but Dallas.
Oh, God. That's so funny. People are crazy about their football passions, aren't they?
Yeah. So it was always a joke. And then when I got her, I was like, he would want me to name her Dallas so we could laugh about it.
So my oldest sister actually lives in Michigan. She moved out there about 20 plus years ago. So
What?
she's from, or she lives in Royal Oak, and she is a die-hard Cowboys fan. Dallas Cowboys.
I love that the universe, again, I will go into my woo-woo world, connected us for a reason. I lived in Royal Oak until I moved here.
Oh,
for real. So did Jim before he moved here. I lived with Jim in Royal Oak in my 20s.
That is really crazy. You might have even passed her on the street.
Yep.
That is really insane. Oh my gosh. Well, I can't wait to tell her that. Do you have anything else that you can share with the audience? Any tips? I mean, you've already, like I said, given us so much to think about and so many wonderful tips for people who either are suffering, are going through a loss, or know somebody who is. First thing I would suggest is make sure you contact Sam, check out her website. The 24/7 Griefhab is the most amazing thing I think I've heard of in a really long time.
Thank you. And I'm sorry we need it, but I agree. And I just want people to know that it's a safe place with no judgment. And if you want to finger paint at 3 a.m, we will encourage you.
And not only that, you could even submit your finger paintings and we'll put them on the wall.
Yep. Yeah. I've said repeatedly, do things your way. After loss, any type of a loss, we've been through so much. Be intentional with how you spend your time, who you spend it with, because we don't know what happens next. And that's something I did. I was very intentional. You have secondary loss with grief and people disappear. I have learned to say no and not do anything out of obligation and not be around anything that doesn't raise my vibrate. We have these choices. So to anybody listening, I would say, you've lost enough. Choose who and how and why you spend your time the way you do. It's your life and you know the way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is the best advice and words of wisdom I think that anybody could hear right about now. So Samantha, thank you so much for being on the show. You are just amazing. I am so glad we connected.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled we've connected and look forward to so much more together.
I have a couple of people I want to hook you up with because I think you guys would make great power partners and great teams. And I think it's really important to get the message out that, how important our mental health is, especially when we're going through the process of grieving, because it truly is a really roller coaster. It's a horrible time to go through. And when people around you aren't being sensitive, it makes it even worse.
Even when they are, people mean well.
Yes, that's
it's
true.
Just up to those of us who have gone through it to let you know, this is what we need. This is what we don't. So ask questions, but just don't say, we need you. It's something horrible has happened. And even if we're not acting the same or calling as much, that's because we're focusing on surviving. So just know we need you. And even a simple thinking of you today means the world.
The art of survival.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks again for being on the show. I would love to have you back. I really want you to come back once the book is published, because I want to hear a lot more about it, and to continue to follow up through the series of the books that you're writing about the mental illness. So
thank you so much.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. We both do. So thank you again. And do check out Samantha's website. Social media, Sam. Do you have social media links or
yeah, and all the links are on my website. Some are Samantha M. Ruth and some are Samantha Ruth. So it's easier to go to the website.
Okay, excellent. And so just remember, take care of your mental health. It's so important. If you are grieving, connect with Sam. Check out the 24/7 grief line. I think that's an amazing service. Or if you know of anybody else that's going through it and needs help, reach out to them and let them know that there are other resources. And Sam is one of them. And that is the way of the Femininja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.